Well, hello. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. I am here today with the fabulous Jane Petit. Hey, Jane, welcome. Good to be with you on this session.
Thank you.
So, Jane, bit of background on Jane if you don't know Jane, although I'm sure many of you do already. So, Jane runs our Academy for Consultants Training at Centered Excellence. She's also a head coach for all of our business development training. And Jane is, in the past, in her background, Jane's been a £1 million biller. So if you are here and you are listening to us on this session, get ready, guys, get a pen and paper, because we're going to be diving underneath. We're going to be pulling apart business development and how to do business development in today's world. And I'm super excited about this, Jane. This is a topic that you and I love. It's very close to our heart, is it not? And I'm really excited because of a number of things. One is that I know that we're going to cover some really cool content around this for people. But secondly, I think this has got to be one of the hottest topics on people's lips right now. Like, for the majority of recruitment business owners that I talk to every day, I'm hearing that this is number one on their strategic list. But I'm also hearing, not so well, that it's number one culprit for stress, anxiety. People are telling me, Katy, this is keeping me awake at night. And for some people, I appreciate that's totally an all-time high. So I'd love to know your thoughts on it. What, in terms of what you're hearing from people around that topic?
Yeah, it's very much the same. And I hate to use the dreaded C word, and I am going to go COVID, not Christmas, because it's still November 15th, guys. But COVID was such a dramatic game changer in our market. You know, we all, and I was in recruitment. I still did a couple of days contracting in recruitment in COVID. So I was there. I remember it. I still remember watching the jobs disappear off the board and thinking, Christ, we're going to have to start again.
Yeah.
But then what happened after COVID was the bounce back. And that's where a lot of the people I speak to hired in teams, and they hired in teams to deal with the clients knocking at the door going, hey, can you recruit for me? You know, it was unprecedented times and a really unprecedented kind of expectation of what followed. And then this time, probably 12, 14 months ago, I was taking calls from clients going, look, there's a downturn coming. We need to get better at BD. But again, I think what happened was, for a lot of people, January, February came, and it hasn't been the strongest economic year. I think we can all accept that. But it wasn't as bad as what they thought. So BD was kind of thought about again. But now, as we come back into November 23, and now I will bring up the Christmas word, it starts to hear that Christmas is coming. The market's a bit murky, is my favorite word at the moment. So what's happening and what's going to happen next year? And do we need to focus on BD again? And I think this is the trauma that the recruitment industry has got itself into. We're always talking about, when should we start business developing? And my argument is, why did we stop? Like, why did we stop in COVID? You know, when we came back from COVID, yes, we were opening the door to lots of opportunities, but you still need to BD, because you've got to put, it's feast and famine. You've got to put things away for when the market does get quieter. Can't just say it's the markets.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I would agree with you on that. And I think some of the feedback that I've had from people saying is that, you know, you got perhaps different people feeling different things. Like, some people where it's like, shit, you know, excuse my language, but shit, the tap has been turned off. I literally have gone from, like you're saying, that kind of like post-COVID boom to I made hay while that year went on, and then suddenly I've just noticed that everything stopped. And, you know, I still haven't got that skill set in my team. And actually, for some people, it's like, that doesn't actually feel that comfortable for me, which I totally get, because the way I used to do BD, you know, back in 10 years ago, is very different to what we're faced with today. And so we've got people that are like, shit, this is like, cash flow is the oxygen to my business, and it is not there anymore. And for how long can I sustain that? Like, really? And then we've got other people that I hear, and they're saying to me, look, Katy, you know, what I've noticed is we've got a trickle, like stuff's coming through, but our key accounts, our major accounts that we would be reliant on and
are easing off.
Right, exactly. Some even freezes. I mean, it depends the markets you're in, whether you're international, whether UK based. But they're easing off, and people are saying, look, we're just not recruiting. And so that landscape is very, very different to where we were 12 months ago, maybe even like you say, 18 months ago. And it always reminds me of, I talked about this book when we were in COVID. Like, have you read the book, Who Moved My Cheese, Spencer Johnson?
Absolutely loved Who Moved My Cheese. It's genuinely, and for anybody that hasn't read it, I'm not just
if you're listening,
it takes an hour to read, and it's probably the most insightful, easy read book, because anytime anything changes in my world, I just think, right, where the hell is the cheese? Let's go find the cheese.
And
that makes sense if you've read the book. If you haven't read the book, I'm sorry, but it's very cheap and it'll take you an hour to read.
Yeah, it's about some mice. And basically their cheese gets taken away, and it's what they have to do and how there's different characters and how they have to react to that cheese, to going and finding more cheese because somebody's just stolen their supply. But ultimately what it's about, there's some really good lessons behind this, which is like change, like your cheese is always going to keep moving. Change is the law of life, isn't it? It's going to happen. But also what it tells you in there is anticipate change and quickly adapt to change. And also that, actually change gives us a lesson, and, it can be enjoyable, but you need to get ready to change quickly. And I think this is what happens for us as recruiters in our markets. We all know it. I've said it and experienced it myself. You're either candidate rich or you're client rich, but you never really feel like you got both happening. It's like, oh my God, I'm either one or the other. But the truth is that no matter what market you're in, no matter what is happening in the economy, the only way to overcome that situation is to actually build a business that has systems in place.
Yeah.
And so really, if your tap of jobs has been turned off, then this is in an uncomfortable way. It really is a lesson and opportunity for you, because it's knocking on the door to say, hey, you probably just haven't got that system in place. And so this is an opportunity for you to build that system.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think actually we've titled this, How the Past Could Inform the Present. And I'll take you back fair few years ago. But when I started in recruitment, and again, not being the grandma in the corner, but I had a very, very clear process for business development. And it was so simplistic. I had a tick sheet on my desk where it said 0 to 80. And my expectation was 80 dials a day to clients, because in those days, candidates, it wasn't necessarily easy. You either headhunted or they came through the door in the post or the fax machine. So it was a very different climate. But the process for BD, where I think we've probably lost this a little bit where we are right now, would be I would call, say, company X on Monday, and the gatekeeper would say, call back on Tuesday. And I would have a little box on my desk. And this is really as simple as it was. And it would say Tuesday calls. And I put my piece of paper into Tuesday. And then when I spoke to someone Tuesday and the client said, call me back in a month, I would move them from November to December. And then in December 1st, I'd take out those pieces of paper. So ridiculously simple, but stupidly effective, because I just called the people that were on those pieces of paper, and there'd be a short handwritten note saying gatekeeper said, or couldn't overcome objection, or is hiring a team in January. And it was like every day was a new day for me, because I'd be like, oh, these are who I'm calling today. And then I added and added. Whereas the future, not the future, the present, where we are now. I mean, God, it's amazing to be a recruiter in today's world, because you've got LinkedIn, we've got automation, we've got ChatGPT, we've got Teams. Yeah. But we've really, I know if I put into my diary, call so-and-so back in a month's time, when that flashes up, I'll go, oh, what was that for? And why is that? And do I really need to call them? Whereas when it was just a box with a piece of paper, that was almost easy, and I had nothing else to do. But it was the consistency that made me a good recruiter, because I just did what past Jane told present Jane to do. And it's how can we get that process? Because we never let go of these clients, to be clear. I'd have pieces of paper that were over a year old, and they got consistency of follow-up. Yeah. How much is that being done now in this recruitment world? Or do we get ignored on LinkedIn, make a couple of phone calls, and then never darken the door of that client again?
Well, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because like you're saying, yeah, I think now in today's world, the reality is the landscape is very different. There's all these tools, all this technology, all these things that are useful, but at the same time, they're actually making our job even more difficult. You'd think they'd simplify it. It's like, but actually people are much more simple than the technology.
I think if we take the technology and we apply the process, it does make it simple. But if you're looking at a tool like LinkedIn and going, my entire audience is on there, that makes my life so much easier. And you just spend all day doing cold outreach after cold outreach. There's no continuance, there's no process, there's no follow-up. So, and please don't anybody watching this think I'm advocating a box and paper. I was very relieved when I moved away from that. But it's that mentality of, it might take me 18 months to win a client. It might take me 4 years. And I've got a balance between clients I'm winning now and clients that are the long game. And I'm not going to stop following them up from that point of view. So I agree. I think the technology we've got can blow our mind. But if we allow ourselves to be the boss of it, if we look at how we can manage it and focus on nailing down a process, then boom, that's when we start to see real differences in our market. And boom, newsflash, it doesn't have to necessarily be your top salesperson doing your process BD. It doesn't have to be you doing your process BD. That's lots of, there's so many cool ways now that we can outsource that to different areas, different people and lower level, lower skilled individuals.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're right. So I agree. So what we're saying here is, it's about systemization of that process. And there are some very interesting stats, aren't there, that actually probably I'll share with people if you're aware or not. But most people, the first thing is that 48% of salespeople never follow up on a
Did that high? Wow.
Yeah, 48%. Now, 25% of people will follow up on a second call, but then they'll stop, right? I'll put my hand up. It's probably me. 12% will only make the third dial and then they'll stop. And then actually, it's really, and this is interesting, 2% of sales are only actually made on that first call, that first contact.
Yeah.
So, but where it goes, and then third call, fourth call, fifth call, and it's not actually until like massive 80% of people's sales will actually come from the 5 to 30. And this is the thing, you actually need now 30 touch points for somebody to convert. So, I know we have our saying, the fortune's in the follow-up, and that's what you're talking about here. But I mean, Jesus, it is that, because if we don't have that system in place, and if you have a team of people that are those classic consultants, like probably you and me, Jane, putting ourselves in that pot, but is that we just won't be able, it doesn't even matter whether we got shiny squirrelitis or not, we just wouldn't actually even be able to follow up with that many people.
I wouldn't have known. Yeah.
So many reach outs.
I also wouldn't have known, I think, if I take myself back to my consultant days, what 30 touch points looked like.
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah, I would have had to, and again, obviously we do this now, we create those with clients, so I fully get what 30 touch point looks like now, but consultant Jane wouldn't have. And it still comes back to that continuity. I remember a time, actually, one of my key clients, probably about 8-9 years ago now, if not longer, actually, because I like to still pretend I'm 35. But one of my key clients, I did all of their recruitment. I placed all of their marketing team. I loved them. They loved me. We did lunches. We were friends on Facebook. And I took a head of marketing job from them once. And I said, I presume it's with me exclusively, in that kind of really uber confident. Yeah. And to which she went, Jane, I'm really sorry. I've given it to a very large international recruitment company who most people would know. And I was like, pardon? And I was like, why? Yeah. And she went, to be honest, Jane, he calls me every Thursday at 10 o'clock, every Thursday at 10, without fail, come rain or shine. If he's on holiday, his colleague calls every Thursday at 10. It's wore me down. I just thought I'd give him a break and give him a go. And I was like, are you joking? Do you know what I mean? I was genuinely, and then I thought, respect to that recruiter. He called, it took me 3 years to get in with that client. 3 years. I only got in with it because I was pregnant and she was pregnant. Very strange story behind there. But anyway, he did it by just following up. But again, really, really manual and a lot of phone calls for that consultant. So when we start to think about how we can take what he did there 10 years ago. How can we process it so he doesn't have to do that? But the moment the client puts their hand up and says, please help me recruit, you get that person stepping into your world. Does that make sense? Or did I go a bit waverly then?
No, you definitely did. And I loved the story behind it. And this is, and this is it. And this is really what we're saying, isn't it? Because there's four things. There's four key things about selling that I just want to share on this so that people are aware. So the first thing is that you need to make sure that you're selling to the right level of person. Mm-hmm. So in that scenario, he got it right? He was going to the right level of person. The second thing that we need to do is we need to be sending the right message. And here's the thing about the right message is people don't change that message dependent on what is happening in the marketplace, dependent on what is happening for their client. So that's the second thing. The third thing is they need to send that message at the right time. Now, that's what you're saying about that guy. He was just like there, relentless every single week, fortunes in the follow-up, I'm there. And then the fourth thing is that you've got to be sending that message in the right way, i.e. on the right platform. Yeah. And I think that's interesting because you talked about, LinkedIn, for example, earlier. Now, some markets, absolutely, their avatar client, their client is on LinkedIn. Some markets, they're not. No. They might actually be on social media. They might spend more time on Facebook or Instagram or somewhere else. Or there's so many of them. It might not be the right way to actually connect with that individual. And what happens is as markets shift, and this is what we're seeing here, this is what we're really talking about on this sesh, on this situation today, is that people won't change that message. And so they use the same message, they use the same way to get in contact with that client, and then they wonder why they're getting the same results. Mm-hmm. So on that, because I've had so many people say to me, but Katy, I'm going to them saying, hey, I see that you're looking for this type of, really, nothing wrong with this. This would have absolutely worked, Jane, back in our day. This would have been the process that we would have done. I see you're recruiting for this type of person. I've got this type of candidate. So they're either taking a candidate to market. But the thing is, there's no and I call it's a bit like courting. There's no trust built before they're sending that message to somebody. So it's almost like you go on a date and you forget the whole, warm-up process and you go straight in for the kill. Process. Yeah. And so people lean back because it's like, well, I don't know you for Adam. And I've got 20, 30 other recruiters messaging me about these perfect candidates that you've all got. But actually, who's taking the time to find out about what my problems are? Who's taking the time to find out about what it is that I really need? Do I even need that candidate? Yes, it might have my name on, on an advert, but actually, is that the person? Because sometimes we know the person's name on the advert is not always the person that's actually making the final decision. So there are all these things as well. So we've really got to, if we want to get ahead in today's market, there are certain things that we've got to change in the way that we do business development. So what we're saying is, or what we're talking about here, just for those people that are listening, because I want people to get lots of value from this, is what we're saying is, you need to look at a couple of things. If business development is a challenge for you at the moment, then I would be asking yourself, first of all, it goes back to, have I actually even got a clear niche? Have I nailed my niche? Who is it that I actually want to do business development with? Because it's not everybody. It doesn't need to be everybody.
I think on that, Katy, sorry. When you're saying in your head, it could be this person or this person, then you've not got your niche. The moment you put the or in, it could be this sort of company or this sort of company or this sort of company. That's not a niche. That's options. That's choice. We're looking at a niche. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point, because we're talking about what we a well-defined niche. So you need to know who your avatar is, because when you're clear on that avatar and you absolutely know their pain points, their desires, you can really, we call it sharpen your offer, because, and that was only going to increase your sales, by the way, because the more sharp your offer is, the more you're directed at the right type of person, the more you're going to increase your sales off the back of that and your placements. But if you're like a generalist, if you're trying to position yourself to too many people, then what happens is that message is diluted. So you're going to go with a sort of general idea. You're going to have a general idea of what your niche want, and therefore you're going to be generally received. So becoming that specialist is really, really key, because when you've got a defined market, then you really understand that client and their pain points and their problems. You can then really craft an offering around that clearly differentiates you from your competition.
Yeah.
And you're right, because there's a lot of people that will say, I do two markets, like even maybe accountancy and finance, for example. Well, that's a sector.
Yeah, that is a sector. You're right. Yeah.
And I'm not, by the way, saying that you should be saying no to lots of different things, but the tighter you can get that niche, the sharper your message will be received. So just thinking about what we're talking about today, then, in terms of solutions for people off the back of this, Jane, and what you're seeing happening, because there's different ways, isn't there, that you can build that system.
Yeah.
It's not the same system is going to be right for everyone, because I've also had people like say to me, oh, but Katy, I hear that everything's about this reach out process on LinkedIn, and it's all about having, all these messages going out. And actually, I wouldn't want to receive it in that way. Some people themselves say that wouldn't work, necessarily for me. But actually, you can have you've got to have a system, you've got to have a funnel in place, but it doesn't have to be LinkedIn, I guess, is what I'm saying.
No, well, post the 2008 recession, I rebuilt a desk based off references. That was my go-to. Yeah. That's what I was really good at. They were the type of calls that I excelled at, and I knew how to flip them at the end. So, yeah. And again, that's kind of one of the tools that we teach people. It's knowing where your skill level lies, because this will tie in naturally to your skill level, and also being prepared to learn some new skills as well. Because I think there's a lot, of stuff that we don't know. And what you don't know.
Yeah, so I think you're right. So what we're saying is you need that process, you need the funnel, and fundamentally, if you want to build a business that will thrive in whatever marketplace, you have to have, we call it an attraction machine, but you have to have that machine in place. But actually, what it's built upon is based upon what's worked for you historically. So it's based upon what works for you and your business. And like you say, this is the key thing with this is newsflash, it doesn't have to be you. This is about building a system that becomes automated and delegated, and works in the background. This is the other thing about it.
I like to say to my clients, if you imagine spinning plates, that this is a plate that you can set off spinning. You make the plate, you build the stick, you spin it, and every now and then you come back and just give it a little, but the rest of the time it spins on its own and does its thing. That's my visual world.
Absolutely. And I think here's a good example as well, because, somebody like we were saying earlier, weren't we? We've got a number of our clients because people might be listening and going, oh, but, BD, I really don't like BD. And that is cool. And I totally respect that. And
I hear that. For all I love converting, I don't like opening doors. Never have.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And so there are ways in which you can build those funnels that, one, it doesn't have to be you. Secondly, it definitely doesn't have to be a cold call. In fact, what we're really talking about here when we're talking about that sales funnel is going back to what I was saying about courting someone, is like, you got to be in it for the long term. It can't just be a one-hit wonder anymore. Hey, if you've got a job and somebody gives you a job, I mean, let's be honest, how many times does that happen? Pretty much very, very rarely. And we know that because only, what was it I was saying earlier, 2% of those clients, are going to convert on that first call. So what we're talking about is building something that really supports you, really supports your business. But because there's so many those touch points that need to happen, it's got to be systemized and automated, because otherwise you're just going to forget. That's ultimately it. But it can be simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. And like you were saying, newsflash, it doesn't have to be you. Like, this is where there is an amazing network of people out there that are VAs, admin people that can be based anywhere in the world that are actually absolutely brilliant at this part of the job.
Yeah.
You know, it's the classic, as Nikki, as I say, you know, your shit is somebody else's gold. And they love that part of the process and they are brilliant at it. Because, you know, if you are actually somebody that's better on the calls and converting, like you're saying there, Jane, if you're that type of person, then actually you don't want to be doing the initial reach out process, because that's going to be more high volume and it's going to need a different type of
and
energy.
the follow-up as well. I mean, I'd say that there is a trend in the people that I train. There's definitely core similarities about people that embark in a career on the BD side of recruitment. And I think 90% of my academy clients would put their hand up and say, look, I'm not massively process driven and I don't like to do boring, repetitive tasks. And what is BD if it isn't a boring, repetitive task? Keep calling these clients on these days, send them a LinkedIn, do this. So actually, let's let these guys shine when it comes to the first call, the discovery call, the taking the brief, the going out on the visit. Let's let somebody else do all the other work before, who would, you know, rather stand in an ice bath for 30 minutes than do the actual call side. Let's split that up. The same way that, you know, we've got systems doing our interview confirmations and recording stuff. That's a really technical term. Well done, Jane. But, you know, let's think about that from, you know, let's make our people shine at what they're great at and build processes and systems at an economical cost, to be clear, that works around that.
Yes, I love that, because this is the thing. These things are free. This isn't, you know, like you're saying, technology that necessarily, well, I say it's for free. I mean, it depends. You've got to hire somebody to do part of the process, but we're talking about hourly rates here. There could be anything from, you know, $6 to $10. We're not talking about, very expensive. But you know, or even LinkedIn licenses. This is done without that kind of, even that technology. Yeah, it's very true. So go on. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I referenced earlier about my 80 calls a day tick sheet. What I was really, really good at in my first couple of years in recruitment was I could sell what we call blind slot sessions. So once I got on the call with a client and took a brief, I would invite them to come to my offices the following week and meet my 4 best candidates. So I'd scribble out that CV sending stage, because obviously it was all facts. It was a bit of a pain. That's what I was great at doing. But I spent the vast majority of my week doing outbound calls. So imagine if we could have took that away from me and just rolled me out onto a call to take the brief. Like, how much more successful would I have been? How much more money could I have built?
Well, 100%. And this is where, you know, that paradigm shift that I had around the whole 360 is dead. Like, if I'd known that, you know, 15, 20 years ago, what difference that would have made? Well, it would have made a difference to you or yours and my roles, you know, back in the day, because we would have been in our area of skill, really, and our area of expertise. And like you're saying, where we can bring highest value to the business. Certainly, it wouldn't be for me going and trying to find that unicorn candidate in the, you know, the peripheral of that awful place of LinkedIn. I say it's awful. I know it's got a place, but how many recruiters just feel like, oh my God, you know, if somebody switched LinkedIn off, what would happen? Yeah. And I mean, that's a pretty frightening.
It would be the rise of the recruiters our age, Katie. We'd be like rolling our sleeves up. We are back. Get us the yellow pages and off we go.
But it's a thought, isn't it? What would happen if LinkedIn suddenly, or it went down, I don't know, it had an awful crash or something, or AI took over and totally, you know, what would you do? Because if your business is reliant on just that one funnel, but you don't even have a process of making sure that you're taking out of that, you know, that there's not a follow-up process that's working for you, you know, and your CRM doesn't either, then, you know, that's a pretty, you're in a danger zone. You're in a danger zone.
Yeah. And, you know, we remember the times before LinkedIn, how long LinkedIn will be here for. We've got no idea how long LinkedIn will remain affordable for everybody for. We have no idea from that point of view. So understanding different funnels of getting people into your business and bringing in clients is just fundamental for anyone that wants to still be here in 10, 20 years time.
Yeah, definitely. So let's wrap it up. And I could see actually that we've got some people listening. So I'd love to know. I think if you've got a question for Jane, all right, just before we wrap up, if you've got a question for us around what we're discussing here around business development, and how can the past inform the present, or any question you've got on BD, pop it in the chat box, because I think we will be able to see it. So it'd be great if we can. Or any comments you've got on what we've just discussed, let us know, because really this is such an interesting topic. And I just feel like the markets that we're in right now, what people are experiencing right now, what people need, ultimately, this is an opportunity. That's how I would see it. This is an opportunity for your business. If you have not got this nailed, this is a real opportunity. And it's interesting that we're almost back to the same scenario that we were in COVID, where people didn't have their BD, they didn't have that attraction machine built. So yeah, any questions you've got, pop it in the chat box. Otherwise, Jane, what would be your passing comment or advice to anyone off the back of what we've discussed today?
I think it's going back to what I said at the start, is what is your follow-up with your teams? So if you've got a bunch of recruiters saying that they can't win vacancies, everybody talks about the low-hanging fruit in recruitment. But if you're only ever running the 100-meter sprint, you're constantly walking back up and starting again. We want to get some of that in, but we want marathon clients as well. So who are we working on now that is our client in 12 months time or in 18 months time? And what does that look like? What's the process in the business? Not just everybody seems really proud in recruitment. Not really proud, that's probably a bit harsh, but everybody says it's just recruitment, it's a roller coaster. And actually, I stopped buying into that sentence probably about 10 years ago, because I thought I don't want to ride a roller coaster every day. It was good fun when I was in my 20s. It's not good fun now when I pay my mortgage off this and I've got children that I'm putting through university off this. I don't want it to be a roller coaster. I want to ride the monorail. I want to ride the monorail of consistent billings. And every now and then I might get off and go and ride a great roller coaster and, double my billings that month. But effectively, I want to be way over target consistently month in, month out. So, and that for me is all about the long game. So if you're sitting here right now, and again, I'm hearing people say this going, look, we haven't got vacancies. The market's really gone quiet for us. This is the time to go, right, let's never get in this situation again. Let's still go after the low hanging fruit, but also what are we doing about the longer term business? What is our 30-stage process? Because, you and I have just said, we probably wouldn't have known. So if you don't know now is the absolute time to learn. So what are your 30 touch points? What can you do over the course of the next 30 weeks or 52 weeks to continuously be reaching out and making that kind of cold introduction, which ultimately turns into business? So it's process. It really is. And as someone that doesn't really love process, but it's process to be successful. And then we can reap the rewards sitting on the monorail, having a nice cup of tea, but knowing that you are consistently over target and growing.
I love that. What a great wrap up. So consistency trumps intensity. And look, if you're listening and you're actually thinking, well, look, I'd like some help with this, reach out to us. This is definitely something that we can support you with. Or if you're interested to take a conversation further with us just to hear about it, reach out. But otherwise, we just want to say, and let us know if there's other topics that you'd like to hear from us on, or in, greater depth on this topic itself. Let us know. Post it in the Facebook group for us and let us know, or post it anywhere else underneath this podcast and let us know. So guys, it has been a pleasure being with you. Jane, thanks so much for your input.
All right, my pleasure.
Today. We're going to be back. We're going to do another line. We really want to serve you between now and Christmas and the long term, because we know that there's some certain topics that people would like some insights into. So let us know what you want to hear about, and let us know if you want anything else from us in terms of information on that. Let us know. Otherwise, go and have a great day, guys. And it's been great being with you. We will see you very soon. Take care.
Bye.